Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Bordage of Partnerships for Authentic Learning and Leadership. This is a screencast that will help us close out this four-module series of the Service Learning Institute. The screencast is connecting the dots of service learning, where we will summarize the main ideas of this process of planning a service learning project, and we will provide a few tips to help with your implementation. The first step in our process back in Module 1 was to help think about change makers as a source of inspiration for service learning projects. We explored the role of change maker stories, and we also had ideas about guest speakers or people in your own school or community who are changing the world, who might come in and inspire your students in service learning. Field trips were featured in videos where students are out at a site looking at problems to solve and then developing service learning projects from those experiences. These are ways to inspire that change maker disposition that is a driver of service learning. We also, in Module 1, explored the role of emotional engagement, that this is a distinguishing feature of service learning from other instructional models of teaching and learning. Emotional engagement can be felt when we have our best days learning. We asked you to track back and decide what was happening, either you as a teacher or you as a learner, what was happening in that experience that helped drive your best day. Oftentimes, it comes down to that emotional engagement or that thinking that, wow, what I'm doing is making a difference, or wow, what I'm doing is the right thing to do for people. That engages our whole heart, and we are emotionally invested in something as well as um, the intellectual investment that we often use in our own learning experiences. Research has shown that emotional engagement lifts thinking and learning. That idea of the shelf was used as a visible metaphor to help us think about the role of emotional engagement and how powerful it is to facilitate service learning. We also explored the idea of problematizing using entry events. We looked at that in Module 2, Module 3, but ties really well to the emotional engagement idea. This is where in your teaching you get students to see something beyond the academic task right in front of them, that something has a purpose and is making a difference is very motivating and oftentimes comes from problematizing in an entry event of a service learning plan. And then we also looked at videos and reflected on examples of those videos where teachers were simply problematizing something. What comes to mind is that playground video of Project Play. I think the title of the video was. I believe that was featured in Module 2, where we saw a teacher facilitate a field trip at a park, Project Place, I think that was called, and students identified these problems to solve. And then back in the classroom, the teacher curated all those problems the students were noting on their clipboards at the park. And the teacher asked, how can we facilitate change? How can we help this situation? What could we do? That's where we create that little sliver of space for student engagement, student voice, and youth leadership. So, all of that together ties to emotional engagement. We then looked at the forms of service learning in order to help guide us thinking through the service learning planning model. There are 5 phases of a service learning project, and these help us with the sequence of activities that students engage in over time in a service learning project. Together, the planning model, the graphic organizer, thinking about the 5 forms of service learning, advocacy, awareness, direct service, indirect service, and philanthropy all tie to eventual product types and engagement in the planning and preparation of a project. So they all fit together and become like their own dot in this way of summarizing. Finally, we explored youth leadership. So we had a couple of videos. The $10 challenge is one that comes to mind now, where students were charged with seeing a problem and solving a problem. We also explored the video, or perhaps you chose the video, I should say, of our friends in Eminence, Kentucky. They use service learning and community service routinely throughout the year. All students engage in project types. And oftentimes there, it begins with this, well, what problem is there out there and how could we fix this? That leads to shared decision making when we ask students for their input on what could happen to make a change. Also ties to the 5 forms of service learning. So once we engage students in asking them, how could we fix this? How could we change this? How could we make this better? The forms of service learning then are your guide to say, well, we could do this based on what they say. And that usually ties to those 5 forms of service learning, one or more. Also, the see a problem, solve a problem idea that creates space for youth leadership helps us think through the phases of service learning project using that project or that service learning planning model and template. Helps us sequence, helps us take next steps, and it's a very powerful tool to, again, engage this youth leadership idea. To close, we'd like to end with 3 tips for your implementation. Our experience as instructional coaches has helped us in thinking through the 3 sort of top questions that we get once implementation of your project starts to take shape. The first is documenting your process. Oftentimes we get to the end of a service learning project and we say to ourselves, oh, I wish I would have, taken a picture of that or taken a video or recorded that in some way. So our tip number 1 is document your process. This documentation could be used as formative assessment. Oftentimes in the Reggio Emilia approach, I'm kind of inspired by this idea of using documentation as an assessment tool of young children learning. And I think it applies here really well too. You could use documentation to update your key stakeholders of your progress in the project. So if you have a project that's lasting a few weeks, you might want to share with your families or your community partners sort of what's happening. That's another good reason to take photos and video, record. You could record quotations. You could make notes. You could have students make notes and help with the documentation process. You also could use documentation to inspire future classes. So, thinking about that change maker idea, what photos might you take to help next year's class or next year's group with their own inspiration for seeing their classmates and fellow students at the school in a change maker light, really taking action. And then finally, you could use the documentation materials that you create as a way to celebrate at the end. So, tip number 1, lots of ways to do documentation of your process. I myself am getting better at documenting with the media that we have available and so easy to use. But I'm usually one of those teachers at the end who says, "Oh, I wish I would have captured that some way." So that's the thinking on tip number 1. Tip number 2 is all about teaming and collaboration, as well as the role of communication in small groups of students working together. So we know that there's ways to structure dialogue and conversation. I'm a proponent of using ground rules or group norms. Those are terms I use interchangeably to describe sort of that vision for how we talk, how we listen, how we collaborate together. What you're looking at on the screen in the white text box are my own group norms I use with my students. You're welcome to use them, or you're welcome to ask students for what they think the norms for engaging in the collaboration of the service learning project should be. They often have really good ideas. In fact, the norms that you see listed here, the 5, are student generated. So through conversation with students, shaping what they say into 5 goals for us when we collaborate, when we talk in our collaboration. You can also use team contracts. If you go back to the PBL work site, in that resource, you can dig in using the search if you have that free account, if you wish to set up a free account. There's examples of team contracts where you can get teams of students to sign off on what they agree to, and ground rules. Those are really helpful. My friend Linda Amici at Westerville City Schools, she taught me in her PBL practice when we collaborated on PBL a few years ago, the role of the daily form. So, really getting the voice of students in their reflection on collaboration. She had daily forms. She didn't use them every day, but routinely she would use a Google form or another digital form mechanism to do a quick check in, check out. And they were pretty simple. One question: how was it working with your teammates today? You might ask, is there room for improvement? What feedback would you give your team? This was anonymous to her as the teacher. This was a grade 5 example. And I was so grateful to see it because it worked really well. She was able then next day, based on what students reported, to touch base with groups, to one case she had to mediate a little bit and kind of remind them of the ground rules. Just a really helpful tool that I observed that I really liked because it let students have that room to create and think together as a group, but provided that support and structure from the teacher point of view. And then finally, in your service learning project, choice-based teams are very helpful to support collaboration. So if students have a choice in what they're working on, this might not apply to all your service learning projects, but some projects might lend themselves to having different teams doing different things, and you might give students the choice there. So those are some ways that we use in our own instructional coaching when we're coaching around collaboration, communication, and teaming. And possibly there's an idea there for you. Again, if you're using the small group practice to guide your service learning project. Finally, tip 3 is all about the planning and preparation phase. So if you think back to that graphic organizer showing the planning model, the service learning planning model, there are those 5 phases. Know that planning and preparation phase tends to take a little time. It might take longer than you intended. Again, that phase is all about students, preparing, doing research, inquiring. They're, kind of learning about that organization, perhaps, or learning about from others what they might do to solve the problem or to fill the need. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of moving parts, is another way to think of it. And just remember that you might feel like this is taking a long time. And you might feel like, ooh, we're kind of stuck in this. In PBL terms, they call it the messy middle. It's just sort of that thick part of the project where you're all really engaged in that active inquiry and learning, and in this case, planning to take action in that project. And it's not being stuck for the students. They're in a spiral, so they're learning, doing the work every day, but it might feel like you're stuck. So I put that line in there, not stuck, just in a spiral, to help you feel really confident that the planning and preparation phase is doing what it should, and that's preparing students to take that action and to implement their ideas. So that's it. 3 tips and a little review in this idea of connecting the dots of service learning. Thank you so much for making a difference. Your work in this endeavor is vital to not just empowering the youth to change the world, which I love, that's very inspiring to me, but also your colleagues, your community, your families. You're really having some major impact in your own spaces, wherever they may be. So thank you for all your hard work and learning. We're going to close out this module 4 with a little bit of celebration that follows, but we are winding down with learning phase, and ramping up for your implementation phase, and we can't wait to learn from you and what your projects will be as we continue together in the Service Learning Institute once we start doing those video calls. So thank you again.